Hello everyone, and welcome back to Talking Points with KPI, episode number 29. Today we have two extra guests. We have Chase and Andrew back with Eric and Dan and myself. Today we're going off another blog style podcast. So if you want to visit this blog yourself, go to kpimh.com. It's under Why the Current Mode of Player Development is Broken. So that's the topic of today's discussion, and we're going to talk about all the silos that are in contention with player development, and as well as why they work and why they don't, and what should be more focused on. So Eric, like we start most blog podcasts, I'll let you just give a brief description, and then we'll go into detail.
Really, the blog is examining kind of the standard model for player development, and the standard model for player development has been in place for a while, but it's expanded now that youth athletics has become this billion-dollar business, basically. So high-level athletes, even to mid-level athletes, as they get into high school, they have all these different, what we call silos. They have their high school coach, their travel coach, their strength coach / personal trainer, their private skill coach, the medical team, whether it's a chiropractor, PT, personal doctor, whatever it is, and then their parents, obviously. So everyone in that process thinks that they're the most important part of that process, and their ego is number one, and what they say is the best, and especially if they're all separate. So if I'm an athlete and I have all these different buckets in my developmental phase. Each one of those buckets I'm paying for, right? Yeah. Except for your parents, obviously. Some parents think they're going to get paid from that, but and then you go to that person and they all want to give their opinion and their context and their philosophy. And what ends up happening is everyone overloads the athlete. Everyone thinks that because they're the most important, they put more stress on the athlete, more stress on the athlete. And what happens is you get this big, huge conglomerate in place that's just creating stress and more pressure on an athlete. Whereas we'll probably get into it a little bit more, but having a system like ours where all of those things are under one roof, we can spread out that stress to all these different areas, have one voice, one philosophy, one system in place, which makes the athletic experience so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about it on prior podcasts before. Me and Chase have talked about it in person, but Chase, I'm going to ask you this first. So like he said, everything's under one roof. A lot of people may say, well, that's a lot for one facility to take on. You have everything that you possibly could in player development. Talk about how you see this facility function at such a high level and how each coach has to be on not only their side, but understand each side as well to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, we already know development's already hard enough, right? But it comes from a standpoint of like contradicting workloads as well. Like when you have too many voices, like Eric was talking about, right? It's like, if we know everything about the athlete from a skill side to the lifting side to either previous injury history or whatever, then we can align that with everything moving forward. And then a lot of times what happens is like a lack of communication between all those different silos, and then all of a sudden something gets lost in the mix, and then this guy's doing too much workload or whatever, and then we're able to take all that and compile that to really give the best plan moving forward.
Absolutely. So Eric, I'll ask you, what do you see? He talked about communication a lot. When we talk about, we give reports to high school coaches, we run parents through certain emails to let everybody know what communication is. Would you say that's the hardest part about running a facility like this?
It's not the hardest part. I think getting the message being received is the hardest part. Like, we overly communicate here.
Yes.
Like, we send out so much information to everyone because we want everyone to be very educated on what we're doing. Like, we don't hide. Like, we put everything out there on the front end, and we want everyone to know what happens in here. But what happens is the reception of that communication. One, a lot of people don't read emails, and it's really the easiest and most efficient way for us to, we have 300 athletes, I think, that train here. We can't send an individual message to each one with what we want to put out there. So we communicate our philosophy through email. We obviously we're doing it through social media as well. So a lot of people either don't read emails, or we put something out there that they just don't want to see or hear, so they just ignore it, And so what happens there is we end up losing a lot of in translation, and really, right now, this time of year, we're putting so much of our resources into building systems here that can absorb some of these issues that go across the spectrum of a siloed approach like this, and make our one system so incredible that it's just undeniable that this is the best thing to do.
Yeah, so Dan,
I want to interject real quick, and I want to go a little bit backwards. I don't want to gloss over the current approach.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are hundreds and thousands of dollars that are getting pumped into, you talk $1 billion industry, right?
Absolutely.
You think it's just the average kid from an average income, which in the Bay Area, we're not average for anything for the most part as far as how much money people make here. But if you're going to have a high school coach, travel coach, hitting coach, pitching coach, and a personal trainer, we have 5 entities they're going to want your time, your energy, and your money. And so we know the more people, like you look at if you in corporations, the more and the larger they are, the more inefficient they become. And so, like you were saying, the hard part with the athlete themselves is that ego piece gets in the way. Where like, I am the expert in this, then you should listen to what I have to say. Absolutely. Or I control your playing time, so you have to listen to what I say. Or I'm a doctor, you can't go against doctor's orders. You have to do what I say. Yeah. And so that competing piece for those three, resources, time, energy, and money. For the most part, energy we can replenish, sleep, nutrition, all that stuff. Money, we can make more money, right? We can haggle, we can do whatever we can to try and make our dollar go further. We cannot make up time. And so having things more efficient, having it in one spot, having an entire staff of people who are working towards you getting better are going to make the one most precious resource, time, used most efficiently. And then as we provide that information and we get that info out to families, I do think a lot of times it's either like, this is something either my kid's just doing I don't really care about, or like there's a harsh reality of like where you want your kid to get to. Yeah. They're far from it. And okay, well I'm not going to pay attention to that, or I'm not going to go to that person. I'm going to go to somebody else, because that hitting coach is going to make me feel good about my swing. And my personal trainer is going to kick my butt, so I'm really sweaty and tired. And then I'm going to go to a different travel ball team because I'm not getting playing time here, so I'm going to go somewhere else. So I think that the current model right now is very broken, and it is set up for all of the outside entities to have success, make money, have a business, do all that. It is not set up with the athlete at the center of it and having their best interests in part. And so you have to, I said this to another family, you need to make sure you use the system for your own benefit. Don't let the system use you. I think a lot of people fall into that second category.
And I want to kind of highlight the novelty of what we're trying to do here. Like we are very passionate about this for a reason, because there is a really, big vision for this. And we're trying to close that last part of the last few gaps that we have in this vision.
Well, and it's a big space that really no one's tapped into yet.
Exactly, and that's our thought. Like, hey, no one's actually doing what we're attempting to do here, and we're very close to closing that gap right now. And you'll hear about it when we do. But Chase coming from professional baseball, coaching there. Like, I want everyone to understand, like, even those inefficiencies, that siloed approach exists at the highest levels of the game, and it's inefficient. So what we're trying to do is really novel, and I think Chase can maybe comment on that inefficiency of, like, having the different entities there that don't communicate with each other.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think, especially in professional baseball, that things would be aligned that way, and it's just not the case. It's the lack of communication is still there. I mean, they're dealing with, actually probably around 300, as well. So it's the same system, right? Yeah. But the communication for whatever needs to happen is always like, again, who's in charge at that moment, and then how important is that moving forward, and then okay, now let's move on to the next guy. And it's just
guys don't.
For sure. And sometimes guys get lost, or the wrong thing is given to one kid, or guys are in a position that they shouldn't be for too long, and that can ruin careers.
Absolutely. So I'm going to bring it to you now. I'm going to bring it back even now to the youth. So we talk about making sure that these kids understand that their development is the key process to them getting better, right? So how would you prepare, because you're in the youth space, how would you prepare those parents to get ready for those kids to say, hey, maybe we won't do the personalized speed training, maybe we'll go to KPI instead?
Well, I think that's where we come along. When we do this, we show them the numbers. We show them the numbers, and it's something new. And it's exciting for the kids, and a lot of parents, I'm talking to them, it's, well, if my kid loves it, I love it. And maybe those would be some parents that aren't diving deep into what's going on here. And to kind of touch on what Dan was saying too, if you're a hitting coach and you're getting paid for that hour to give a lesson, your job, whether it's some kind of ache or something with the kids going on, is to get that lesson and do your job. Under this umbrella, it's to address that and then take care of that first. And then after that, we can get back to business.
Yeah.
And the youth space is very interesting to me because, like right now, the belief for player development for a youth player, you're getting a lot of different messages. Multi-sport, play a bunch of sports. Where you will see kids, I'm on the AAU team, I'm on the I'm on the football team, I'm flag football, I do baseball, I do that, I do that. Yeah. Oh, I also have tutoring, and I do play the piano also. Yeah. So we need this well-rounded kid that does all these things. To a certain extent, yes, but again, time, energy, money. There's only limited amounts of all. I think the other that's being sold is playing against better competition makes you better, and that's completely false. If that was the case, then we should just set the machine to 100 miles an hour and have every kid hit against it, and all of a sudden every kid's going to be better because a harder competition makes them a better athlete. We know that that's not true. And then the others, I think we're getting past this, but the sports specialization, only play baseball. Only it's just my hitting coach and my pitching coach and then a speed coach and then a travel ball coach and my high school coach. Just specialize so you become the best in your sport. And we know that that's false too. And then the answer to all these questions for the youth player is, I think the key to it is do they like doing this? Like you're saying, if my kid likes doing this, then they're going to get better. That's the key. And I always use the analogy and example like video games. A kid would sit and play 8 hours straight of video games if they could.
He loves it.
Because they love it. The parents aren't present. They don't have any influence over what I get to do when I'm playing my video game. And I get direct, instant feedback. Did I get better or did I get worse? And that's really a lot of the things we try and do for our youth players is set up that same environment where your parent's not in here chirping at you saying, raise your hands, drive your hips, all that stuff. And then they get instant feedback to, hey, was that was my process here good or was my process here bad? And we give them the ability to succeed and fail and try and figure things out versus force feeding going to that lesson model. There is a pressure for the lesson coach to give you all the answers.
Yeah, right then and there.
Display it in front of you and then show your work to your parent. And there is no opportunity to fail in the lesson because if they fail in the lesson, I'm not coming back to this person. I'm not going to go back to you.
Or he's not going to say, hey, you don't got it today. How about let's do it next week and free of charge today?
Yeah.
He's going to make his money that day.
Yes.
And the problem is, too, the lesson model is if they have success in the game, the lesson coach says, oh, we need to do more lessons because look at it's working.
Yeah.
All right. And then the flip side of that is if they don't have success in the game, it's the field coach's fault. We need to, come back to me and I'm going to throw you some more flips or something,
Yeah.
and that's it's really dangerous actually, and it's deceiving and this gets better if there's communication between all these different entities. So if the field coach and the lesson coach are communicating, then there could be some value there.
Yeah.
But especially in the travel ball world, a lot of times that field coach and the lesson coach is the same guy. So there's this really push-pull there to get more lessons to get more playing time.
And I hate that idea of giving the responsibility of success away from the athlete themselves. That's the whole idea. It's like if I'm dependent on you to make sure that I hit well, then if you go away or something happens, then how am I going to hit? It doesn't make any sense. It's like
I think that's one of the dirtier secrets of travel balls. If your hitting coach, your pitching coach is also the person who writes the lineup, they have the most important commodity to that athlete, playing time. And so, I need to get comfortable with who you are. I hear that a lot in the softball world. Well, I need to know what your swing looks like.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do in practice. When I'm paying you to practice it on the field, why do I have to come and do an extra lesson with you? Oh, well, I'm going to help with this one thing. I can't do it in a group setting. Okay, so you're saying that you're limited by the fact that there's 10 to 12 kids at a practice?
Yeah.
You're not capable enough to figure out a way to create a system that then enables the athletes to get better so that you are free to then dive into those little things. The model, the player development model right now is to help coaches make money. It is not built to help players reach their full potential.
For sure.
Just blunt, just straightforward.
So let's talk about maybe some of the different areas that we have in here
Yeah, I was just about to say.
that can kind of transition into those. So kind of talking about all these different areas, right? So on the skill side, we have professional coaches in here.
Yes.
Like I said, like it says in the blog, our skill guys are some of the best in the industry. But where's the start is Dan gives an assessment. I think it's a joint body assessment. We use the force plates to dial on the strength side, and then that information is shared. If the kid's highly externally rotated in his hips, Chase is going to know about it. He's going to know right away, maybe not to mess with his stance if his toes are pointed out. So that would never happen. There would never be an assessment taking place. And certainly if there was an assessment by a PT, they wouldn't go ahead and share it with the lesson coach, right? So we kind of break down that barrier right away with on the skill side.
Yeah, so even with that, even if there was information shared between each entity, they all speak different languages.
Sure.
So a PT would say, hey, they lack some flexibility of their hip flexors and they lack internal rotation on their front hip, and the hitting coach would be like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, how does it correlate to me?
Or the hitting coach is like, hey, when your front foot hits the ground, you just don't have stability on your front side.
Yeah.
And then the PT will okay, well, we need to go after this strength in this area. And no, we need to do this drill. We have to, each person wants to solve the problem with their expertise versus stepping back and saying, okay, what's the best for this athlete? Who's going to solve that the quickest for them? And then move on to the next phase of the system. So I overvalue the assessment side just because it is something that not many youth athletes, when they go to a hitting or pitching coach, are going to get physically assessed.
Very true.
Very few that are getting physically assessed are jumping on force plates to get that information.
Also
And then this is really part of our core of what we're doing is like, once we understand who you are, how you're wired, how you were built, then we go after skill development. Versus typically we go after skill development first and then outsource the strength, the speed, the power, whatever to somebody else.
Yeah.
I think that integration piece is huge for us.
And that integration, the reason why it works so well is like if we have a mobility deficiency, if we have a strength deficiency, if we have a potential injury on the table, and in here, they go through their warm-ups, their skill, and their strength all in one session. If we're making gains on the training side, and then we see it 10 feet away pop up on the hit tracks and the exit velocities are going up, we know right now we can validate our approach, and that can't happen with a segmented system. That can't happen with a siloed system because this person doesn't talk to this person. They don't like each other usually, whereas this way we can walk a few feet and check reports or ask questions to the skill coach or ask questions to the strength coach, and we get it right away.
I want to ask a question. It's more so I want to do for Chase on the high school side, you on the youth side. Do you have any tangible examples of what we're talking about? Make this more palatable, Chase, as far as high school players?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's plenty of examples on the force plate side. We've talked about this before, where it's if I need a kid to get more into their backside and they're not strong enough to do that, well, then we have to find a different approach, right? I can communicate with you and tell you to all right, this guy, here's the things that we're seeing on the force plates to get them better that way, but then we have to figure out how to put them maybe in a better position physically, and that's where the assessment can come in to be able to actually attack and to be better at the skill that they're doing. I say this all the time. It's you can't get the human body to execute a skill better if you don't understand how the human body works and understand how the machine that's in front of you is built, right? But a lot of times it's for example, we talk about slot. If I don't have any external rotation, I can't get there, and so that part of the assessment definitely matters. Specifically, I don't want to name any names, obviously, but there's been plenty of times where it's I understand that a kid is unable at their age to do what I want them to do, right? So then we need to move on to something else until they get to that point, and at least we can measure it,
Yeah. And that probably blends into the youth side because I feel like that's more common than not. And you started getting your feet wet on the strength floor, and you see the
Well, me and Chase had 2 talks recently in the past couple of weeks. One was actually last night with a kid. When we see his swing, we start talking about, okay, can his body do this? Can his body do that? And it wasn't even about where should he do with swing-wise. It was what can his body do to get there? What can we do to have him feel this without taking a drill? And another one was on the youth side. Parents come to you about, oh, my kid may be dipping and getting here, and then we had to talk with a parent well, these youth kids are a lot more flexible as young kids than they are when they get older, so that's kind of something that you can't really tell them not to do that because his body's allowing him, but it won't allow him to do that in a couple of years. So kind of got to let it go for now, and then we'll assess it when everything gets rounded up as it matures and everything.
Yeah, and I feel that ends up becoming part of the problem is we need to fix this now. Yeah. This is that's the lesson model, right? This needs to be fixed immediately. This is the only thing that's going to work, and you just don't understand that.
Games this weekend.
Yeah. No, but exactly, you know what I mean? There's only so much you can do if the same thing with the youth example. If they're flexible like that and that's how they swing, you got to play the game out. We can't do this right now.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that integrated approach, and this is probably an overarching that we've kind of created the system not by accident. Everything's on purpose, but it's one of those when you're doing things right, it comes to full fruition. By having an athlete get in this building when they're 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, get them into our systems, and then get into where they're 10 to 14 years old, they're in our systems, and then 14 to 18, that is continuity. That is a path to give your player the most chance for success, and then having a continuity where our high school coaches work with our youth players, and our youth coaches work with our high school players. Everybody's working with all the athletes in this building. We use all the same systems, we use all the same tech. We just make it palatable and applicable to that athlete. We're not going to talk about early connection with a 10-year-old. We're going to say, you're going to swing hard and hit the crap out of the ball. Like, that's just all we care about. Like, but when it gets appropriate, then we get to that next level. And so having all of our coaches speak the same language and you know, have the same goal of I want to help this athlete reach their full potential. And right now, I'm the best for this athlete, or that tee's the best for that athlete, or the baseball coach on the field is the best thing for that athlete right then. That's makes this thing whole work.
And we facilitate that systematic approach internally. Like we've done a good job of it, and we're doing a better job of it now, training new hires. Like, hey, here's our system. You go through this, go through these programs, and I think once we're done with the spring, we even have larger goals for that kind of stuff. So a lot of it is organic and does happen through osmosis, but we're also being super proactive on the front end when people walk in that door to work here. Like, there's a system in place to teach them our philosophies, our language, and that's ultra important because, like Dan said, like we're doing this across the entire spectrum, so we got to have that same voice kind of all the way through.
Yeah, we're becoming KPI. Yeah, some people may like other coaches, have their favorites or whatever, but if a new guy comes in here with a new idea, it's being taught to everyone. That becomes the KPI way, and everybody's pushing. We have the discussions in the meetings, and we're pushing what's best for the kids together. It's becoming a KPI voice.
That's the overwhelming thing that we've always said on this podcast is the athlete comes first. I don't think anybody that works here would disagree with that at all. I'm going to bring this full circle kind of to the last point, most likely, but the parents. So they're most likely the biggest part that we have to deal with in KPI. We don't allow them in the facility, though. So people may say, well, why do you do that? But you were talking about the assessments. Every parent that comes in here on their first assessments gets a tour with you along with the assessment. So it's not just the athlete going through the assessment with you. It's as well as the parent and getting a better understanding of their child. Can you attest to how that has maybe kind of transferred people to here?
Yes, it's buy-in.
Yeah.
Like, that's probably the biggest component that way you have to get people on your side. So the assessment process is aimed at that, obviously gathering all the information that we need to design the program, but it is also displaying and building that credibility and that trust, right? The parents that never show up in here, trust us. The parents who are always coming in, looking and wanting and seeing what's going on in here, there's either a lack of trust in us as a staff or my lack of trust in my child that they're working hard. And I think that those two things are very real. The one thing we have expanded this, we used to say no parents in the facility, just because it was just easier that way, and COVID gave us some good cover. Is we'll extend it. Hey, if you're a youth player, you can come in for a consultation. We'll spend 30 to 45 minutes with you, take you on a tour, show you how this works. If you want to see a session going on, we try and have you come in during a youth session so you can see that. And then even beyond that, if you really want to hang out for a few minutes while the session starts, you can hang out for the first session. We know you're dropping off your 8 to 12-year-old. Like, this is your baby. We need to earn that trust and that credibility. And we even do it with our high school families too. Like, we know what we're doing is drastically different, so more visibility is really good. But like I said, with our high school kids, it's an hour and a half to 2 hour long process. And we're working on ways to revamp our assessment process to make it even more in depth, more insightful, more actionable,
more palatable for the people to understand.
Correct.
And then kind of I think the last thing to highlight, and a lot of it's going on now, but a lot of it's we're planning for the future. Like I said, we're going to close this gap and then really have the whole system in place, is the medical side. So what we have done historically is we have our internal communication system where any owie that pops up, we type it in to our internal communication, and then we answer back and forth as far as who's going to handle it, what we're going to do, all that stuff. Dan's taken it to the next step, and he's created a return to training system. So anyone that has, we're going to kind of put a number on it, like let's say a 3 out of 10, we're going to pull them out of general population, give them a 3 to 7 day template and protocol to follow to basically do our first layer of intervention of a possible issue. If they don't advance out of the return to training protocol and they're still having issues, then we send them to the second layer. That second layer could be PTs, chiros, athletic trainers, and then if that doesn't work, or if it's a serious enough issue, we skip the second step. We go all the way to orthopedics. We have great relationships with a whole bunch of orthopedics in the Bay Area. They refer to us, we refer to them. There's open communication there. So that's one side of things, and then the other side of things, we're getting close to having medical personnel in here full time. Right now we have them on a part-time basis. We kind of like strategically do it based on when we're the busiest and have the most older athletes in here. But hopefully by the summer we're in place where we have someone here full time that we can refer to kind of handle some of the injuries that pop up. And that will be us closing the loop completely and really creating the system we have a vision for.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else? Any more comments? No?
Oh, good.
All right. Thank you guys very much for listening to Talking Points with KPI, episode 28. Once again, if you do want to see the blog more in depth and you didn't get enough info from this conversation, please go visit kpimh.com. Go to the blog tab. It'll be the first one at the top, written by our very own Erick Wagley. Thank you guys very much for listening. See you guys next time.
Okay.
We're recording a podcast. You need to be quiet.